Well, absolutely, quite a very important day as the University of Johannesburg is hosting this particular event to look at the role of SADC, a very important institution. You go back to the days of the frontline states where it was all about just moving away from the reliance of the apartheid to South Africa, and fast forward to the inclusion of so many states, the fall of the colonial rule, and of course, joining us now is the former Zimbabwean Deputy Prime Minister, Dr. Tambara. And of course, I mean, he's an academic also at UJ. So once again, Doctor, thank you so much for your time. Let's look at the significance of today. We're talking about revitalizing SADC, make sure it's responsive to the needs of the people. Are we on track in making sure that's a reality?
The important agenda today is to do some reflections, to look at the history of SADC, to look at the vision of SADC, the mission and the mandate, and say, how have we done 30 years later? 17 August 1992, that's when SADC was formed. 30 years later, how are we doing? Have we lived up to the expectations of our vision? Have we been in keeping with the history? The history of SADC is the history of liberation. Frontline states were about liberation, and then SADC with the double C was about delinking from apartheid South Africa. There's a history of collaboration, a history of putting the region before nation, putting Africa before nation. Are we doing that? And you find that we have a lot of accounting to do in terms of living to the spirit and history of SADC, living to the spirit of the mission and vision of SADC. That's what we're doing today, to pick up the lessons and build a better SADC.
And just once again, Doctor, I mean, it's often labeled as a toothless bulldog. It's often labeled as an organization that is very lethargic in terms of responding to the crises. How does it overcome the challenge?
It can't be a toothless bulldog. His grandfather was the frontline states. They liberated Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Namibia. His father was SADC with a double C, where that was delinking from South Africa and produced independence in Namibia and in South Africa. So the history of SADC is the history of delivery. So if SADC is failing now, it's because we have failed to leverage the history of SADC. If SADC fails today, it's because the leaders have no vision. The current leaders in SADC have no vision. The people of SADC are not taking advantage of the opportunities of SADC. So no, it cannot be a toothless bulldog if we want it to be effective. What it means is our leaders, presidents, prime ministers, parliamentarians, ministers, must understand that we are saying in SADC, the region is more important than the nation. Regional sovereignty is more important than national sovereignty. Put the region first and then the country second. Why? Because collective success, regional success, will produce national success. We are saying that numbers make a difference. You can't have Botswana go and negotiate with the EU, South Africa go and negotiate with China, Malawi go and negotiate with America. No, why don't you go and negotiate a SADC? We get better deals because of economies of scale. More importantly, SADC must be understood as a building block for the United States of Africa. The AU is the final destination, an AU which is driven by 1.3 billion Africans, collective GDP $2.5 trillion. Can you imagine if I woke up and say, here I come, I'm the African. I speak on behalf of 1.3 billion people. I have a GDP behind me of $2.5 trillion. If you do that, they will talk to you not out of love, but out of economics. So our leaders, our people must understand that our future belongs to the region. Our future belongs to the continent, not the country. You must be able to say, I'm an African first, a member of SADC second, South African third, Zimbabwean third, Malawian third. Our people, our leaders are not ready. They pay lip service to regional integration. One big indicator is budgets. How many national ministers of finance say, I'm presenting this budget, and it's agreed at SADC, I'm going to do the following. It's agreed at the AU, I'm going to do the following. No, all ministers of finance in SADC are running national budgets driven by national priorities. That's a travesty of justice.
Doctor, you once had a very influential position in Zimbabwe, and we know from time to time it gets highlighted the issues of the political climate, especially in the run-up to the elections next year. How SADC has responded to some of the flagrant abuse of human rights and many other concerns. What would be advised to SADC? I mean, you look at the Kingdom of Eswatini as well. It's a major issue as well. You look at Lesotho, among other things. So how does SADC really get down and make sure that they prioritize all these issues of making sure that peace and stability is key?
I think the starting point is to say there have been some successes by SADC. The GNU in Zimbabwe was a SADC product, and it achieved a few things. So we must give credit to SADC where it succeeded and also criticize them where they make mistakes. So yes, you're right, there are issues in Zimbabwe, Eswatini, Lesotho. South Africa has got issues that must be taken to SADC. So, but the challenge is that there is this doctrine of non-interference. This issue of saying that we must not interfere with the national sovereignty of Swaziland, national sovereignty of Eswatini, national sovereignty of Zimbabwe. That's the handicap. We must do away with the idea of saying national sovereignty cannot be questioned. We must emphasize what we're calling collective regional sovereignty. That is more important than the sovereignty of Zimbabwe. That's more important than the sovereignty of Eswatini. If we do that, then we say, okay, Zimbabwe, okay, Eswatini, why don't you do the following so that our region can prosper together? Remember, we are now talking about what we call regional competitiveness as opposed to national competitiveness. Regional attractiveness as opposed to national attractiveness. You know why? Because if an investor is in Japan, an investor is in China or in America, looking at the region, South Africa won't be attractive if there's chaos in Eswatini. South Africa won't be attractive if there's chaos in Zimbabwe. It is in the interest of South Africa for the region to be prosperous. So our futures are inextricably linked, and we must make sure that we understand that we're going to sink or swim together. Let us put the region before the country. We are all Africans.
We're all Africans. Before I let you go, Doctor, in South Africa, the issue of xenophobia. I mean, recently we saw the Embassy of Health in Limpopo under siege in so many quarters. But then you have those who do applaud her for her remarks. But, I mean, it's a healthcare facility. What would be your immediate reaction? And how do we overcome these challenges of cohesion, whether non-South Africans and many other people?
Let me start by saying that the government of Zimbabwe, the government of Malawi and Botswana must make sure they fix the healthcare systems in their countries so that there's no need for Zimbabweans to come to South Africa for healthcare. We have a duty and obligation in Zimbabwe to take care of our own people. We have a duty and obligation in Malawi to take care of our own people. In other words, national countries, national economies, national healthcare systems must work so that there's no influx of people in South Africa looking for jobs, looking for healthcare. We have a duty and obligation as national leaders to fix our countries and fix our national healthcare system. However, the remarks of the MSc of Limpopo is disgraceful because she's not conscious. She doesn't understand that we are all Africans, that SADC, the regional arrangement, is more important than South Africa. She doesn't understand that these borders, Botswana, Zimbabwe, are not our borders. So for her to be speaking eloquently about victimizing a patient is disgraceful, because we must be putting the region before the country, the African before the South African, the African before the Zimbabwean. So we need more solidarity, we need more consciousness among our leaders. So the MAC from Limpopo demonstrated the lack of ideological clarity, lack of understanding of Pan-Africanism, lack of understanding of regional solidarity. Yes, we know the healthcare facilities are being constrained by, and overextended because of people coming from other regions. But to go to the extent of exhibiting xenophobic tendencies in the way she did is really disgraceful, because we must have the tragedy right now. Our leaders in South Africa have no ideological consciousness, have no Pan-Africanism in their bloodstream, and these are liberation movements. It is said that we have leaders who don't understand that South Africa is a product of solidarity. The Zimbabweans, the Malawians, and the Mozambicans were involved in the liberation of South Africa. Kwame Nkrumah, Ghana, Algeria, all these countries participated in the liberation of the rest of the African continent. So there must be some element of understanding that we are all Africans and we should not be taking out our emotions and anger against fellow Africans. And in any case, what happens is sometimes with xenophobia is poor Africans attacking other poor Africans. The challenge is that the South African economy has not performed in a manner to take care of African needs in South Africa. What ended in 1994 was political apartheid. South Africa right now is economic apartheid. The commanding heights of the economy are in the hands of a few wise. There's no economic freedom in this country. That is the problem. If we fix the issue of ownership of the economy in South Africa, there'll be less xenophobia. Black Africans are fighting other Africans over crumbs, over tidbits, because the economy has not been transformed. We have a largely untransformed economy in South Africa, which is leading to all these problems. But however, we also encourage national governments to perform and take care of their own people so that there's no influx of migrants and all kinds of people into the South African economy. But the bottom line is, let us make the region perform. Let us make Africa perform. You will never be respected as an African until the entirety of the African continent is doing well. You will never be respected as an African as long as some African somewhere is having a bad day.
All right, Doctor, thank you so much indeed for that. Quite a very invigorating session, of course, as we look at the role of the SADC right here in the regional bloc, but also looking at a plethora of issues facing SADC countries, whether you look at poverty alleviation and many other challenges that are still dominant in this region and in many other parts of the continent. Khalihle Khumalo, SABC News, Johannesburg.